Hello YouTube and Patreon, this is Nathan P. Butler, and this is our project update for the month of June 2020. I'm recording this on June 26th. The last of these went up onto YouTube on May 24th. So we're talking about a month, and it's been a pretty momentous month as far as changes and new information to pass along here. Plus, of course, we had new releases to talk about, so we're going to dive right into it, but my guess is this might be a longer project update episode than usual, but hopefully not by very much. So, very quickly, I want to thank all of you who are backers over on my Patreon. Again, it's patreon.com/NathanPButler. There are multiple tiers over there. There's a $1 tier, the Travelers to the Butler Universe, a $5 tier, the Denizens of the Butler Universe, and then the $10 tier, which is the Nobility of the Butler Universe. Those who are in the Travelers level, they get a thanks in the next edition of A Saga on Home Video, the second edition that's due out late this year or early next year. They also get thanked in episodes like these, including in the credits. Jump up a tier to the Denizens, they also have that, but add audio commentaries, at least 2 audio commentaries from me each month, primarily right now for the Clone Wars. Then jump up again to the top tier. That's the Nobility of the Butler Universe. They get access to an exclusive Q&A video each month that nobody else gets to see or ask questions for. So if you're curious about that stuff, and if it sounds interesting, again, patreon.com/NathanPButler. Right now, we have among the travelers through the Butler Universe, we have Austin Pierce, Ben Abrams, Ben P. Stein, Daniel Marchant, Jacob Kapoor, Jeremy Goss, Kevin Kreiner, Michael Torson, S.W. Chris, and Tony Jenkins. Among the denizens of the Butler Universe, those who get access to, among other things, those audio commentaries, we have Andrew Gilbertson, Bobby Craig, Dave Broadway, Gary Sherwood, Jason Hunt, Jeff Ellis, Jeff Rabjans. Am I saying that right, Jeff? Jeff just jumped over from actually the Star Wars Home Video group, so I want to make sure I'm saying your name right. So if not, let me know. Jeremiah Mustard, Joy Zitzman, Joseph Blankenship, Kyle Pellegrini, Matt DeRochers, Robert Medina, Stephen Milicia, Travis Taylor, and Walker Langstrat. Running out of breath as I go through the list because it is quite a few people, which is awesome. Very, very, very glad to see that. And then we also have our Nobility of the Butler Universe, which is now a fairly large group, which is cool. It's going to make for some long Q&A videos if everybody starts asking questions, but that would still be awesome as well. We have Aaron Melzak, we have Ennis, Andrew Bettis, Benjamin Handelman, Brian Snook, Jonathan Pickens, Jonathan Confer, Matthew Hardesty, and Sam Howard. So thank you all for being part of the Patreon over there, and let's dive into what has come out since the last recording. For commentaries for Patreon, essentially this was sort of the month in which we ended Season 3 of the commentaries. So we had Padawan Lost on June 1st, and on June 15th we had Wookiee Hunt. That also was my wedding anniversary as well, 7 years. Then, of course, we had the exclusive Nobility of the Butler Universe Q&A episode. That went up on June 6th, and that was the 30th of those. So if you're interested in some Nate talking about, stuff that may or may not have been asked elsewhere, that has a little bit more of a free-form style of more detailed answers than you might necessarily get on a standard episode of a show on here, then you might want to check that out. Because, again, jumping on the Patreon gives you access not just to what comes out that's new, but also everything else from that tier all the way since the beginning. And again, there have been 30 of those Q&A episodes, and 67, I guess it is, commentaries for Clone Wars plus 2 for Forces of Destiny. That's a lot. By the way, speaking of those commentaries, the ones for the first arc of Season 4 are already ready to go. That's Water War, which will release on July 1st, and then July 15th will be Gungan Attack, and then we'll have Prisoners on August 1st. And I have my notes done for the next couple so I can record those in the near future and hopefully try to stay ahead as much as I can. As for podcasts, kind of big news going on with the podcasts right now. And I apologize that the light is bothering you. It's bothering me as I'm recording, but I think the system will fix some of the flickering. It just drives me nuts, but I'm having to record at night here. So no sunlight coming in to help with the flickering. But speaking of podcasts, basically on June 8th, we had the release of Star Wars Beyond the Films number 247. That is me with Mark Herleman, or has been me with Mark Herleman, talking about Star Wars stuff, books, comics, and so on. In this case, it was the comics portion, the final portion of our year in review episode, looking back at 2019. Yes, at the beginning of June, we were still finishing our look back at 2019. And maybe it's appropriate that it was on June 8th. June 8th tends to have a special resonance, sort of at times, it seems. Back in my hometown, it was the day of some major storms, including one with a story my mom tells all the time about how our side of a duplex had its power knocked out, but the other side did not. So we ran an extension cord from one to the other to keep the refrigerator running, except when it was unplugged so I could watch something on TV that was my one go-to thing as a kid. So June 8th, kind of appropriate in that way. June 8th also, I believe, was the date, though I forget the year, when my parents' divorce was finalized, so a major change there. And June 8th is also the birthday of Michael Morris, the host of Cloud City Casino that I've also been co-hosting for a while now. So June 8th is kind of a particularly, again, kind of resonant day, whatever you want to call it. So maybe it was fated, but not really, that June 8th would be the day that this episode came out, because this was the episode in which, aside from just covering the comics, we brought in a guy named Jim Lehane, Dr. Jim Lehane. He is actually going to be taking over my spot on Star Wars Beyond the Films after the next episode that we are recording on Sunday. The reason I'm recording this at night on a Friday night is that we are recording my final episode of Star Wars Beyond the Films on Sunday. You may recall that in the last of these project updates, in fact, for a while, on the project updates, I've been talking about how damn difficult it was and has been to try to get a chance to record anything for a podcast, because it means adults trying to organize schedules when they have kids and families and all this kind of stuff, which makes it difficult, and jobs and everything else. And how that's what sort of drug out Star Wars Beyond the Films with months oftentimes between episodes. Same thing with Cloud City Casino. It was just difficult to find times for me to record with Mark or with Michael for, again, Star Wars Beyond the Films or Cloud City Casino, respectively. And I talked about how something would have to give somewhere at some point, that the fact that it was so difficult to come up with scheduling recording times was also why we didn't come back for Republic Forces Radio Network or Star Wars Reports Rebels Roundtable to talk about the new season of the Clone Wars, even though we really wanted to do it. Just one of those things that's just very difficult to manage. So I finally decided that it would be better for me, better for my family, better for my time and my stress levels, and my sense of whether or not I'm letting down the community or letting down Mark or Michael or letting down anyone else, if I finally said, you know what, 18 years is enough. I've been podcasting since the day that Attack of the Clones got released in theaters, May 16th, 2002. Went to a midnight showing, came back, recorded my first episode of Chrono Radio. Since then, I've done Chrono Radio, executive produced other voices, executive produced and did a lot of episodes of Fan Audio Made Easy, ran Fan Audio News Source, did, the Butlerniverse, did the Star Wars EU Primer podcast, did the EU Review, Star Wars Beyond the Films, Cloud City Casino, Star Wars Reports Rebels Roundtable, Republic Forces Radio Network, did constant guest spots on stuff like Star Wars On Direct briefly, Star Wars Action News, and all kinds of audio dramas as part of the podcasting scene, like the first serious one released online, which was Second Strike, that I co-produced with Chris Hannell. Things like the anthology series, Nothing Changes, which I wrote but didn't produce. My Choose Your Own Adventure one, Always in Motion, Ambush on Ankara. My acapella one, Solitude. All kinds of audio productions over the years. A crap ton. Butlerniverse, that's actually where the name came from. Somebody who's a friend of mine came up with that name for the audio drama universe that I had created for all those audio dramas that all kind of linked vaguely together. And the name stuck and became the name of a podcast, which now has carried over into the name of the different tiers and such over there on Patreon. So, a lot of stuff over the last 18 years. And it's been an incredibly fun time. I've probably had more fun podcasting with Michael and Mark here in these last few years. In the case of Mark, for 8 years, I guess, with Beyond the Films, that I've had in all the years doing podcasting. Because back in the day, it was different. These days podcasting is the norm. Back in the day, podcasting was not something people generally did. The word podcast didn't exist when I got into this stuff. We called it internet radio shows. There had been Jedi Talk that was streaming in English. There was Star Wars On Direct. That was 99. Star Wars On Direct streaming in French in 2001. You had SF Radio's Star Wars The Cantina streaming, I believe in German, in 2001. Then you had Digital Llama Radio doing actual downloadable episodes as the first run rather than streaming in 2001, and did my Chrono Radio, which is the one that sort of threw the format out and stuck with sort of a one-host thing, almost like a TV pundit, Maddow, Hannity, Anderson Cooper type of thing, with one host constantly bringing in guests for different segments to talk about stuff. I mean, that was back in the day when I was editing, or I was recording with Total Recorder. I was editing with QuickTime Pro, which was a nightmare, until Chris Hanel actually taught me how to use WaveLab when I took over the editing duties on the second and third acts of Second Strike. And kept using that for years until switching to Audacity. This was back when I did my first interviews, like with people like Kevin J. Anderson back in the day. I didn't have the ability to use Skype at the time. It wasn't a thing yet, right? So we're talking about getting a prepaid calling card, an AT&T prepaid calling card, to call long distance. Calling long distance from a landline to his landline, or whoever's landline it happened to be. And I happened to have a landline phone that was a cordless phone, not a wireless phone, not a cell phone, but a landline that had a base unit and a cordless attachment that you walked around with to talk that transmitted back to the base unit. But my handset that you would carry around had a speakerphone built into the back of it. So I would take it to my desk, put it on speakerphone, and slide it underneath my little Radio Shack stick microphone to record the interviews. And it sounded basically like you would hear people talking on the radio at the time, where the person who was the guest sounded like they were coming through a phone, because they were. And that just kind of grew, and it became much more of a mainstream hobby. It became something that expanded to the point where we needed a home for it, so I set up StarWarsFanWorks.com at the time. Eventually it got so big and outgrew that initial small community that I sort of disbanded what FanWorks had been, and now it's basically just a site for my stuff. But we had a lot of really cool years where we were sort of this nucleus of a very small niche within fandom that finally exploded, which brought, mixed feelings, right? Because we weren't the center of it anymore, but at the same time, the hobby finally had some validation. We weren't seen as just the knockoffs of the people who, were too mouthy or arrogant to want to stick to forums, so they had to do some type of audio, but they weren't talented enough to do fan films, so they stuck with audio productions. Was kind of the way that we were seen early on. That was gone. Podcasting was a thing. And it's been cool to see that evolution, to be part of this community as it has evolved and changed. And looking back on it, I wouldn't change it. It's opened up a lot of doors. I met a lot of great people that I otherwise would not have, including Mark and Michael, that I would not have met if not for that. Or the dedicated listeners over the years, Matt DeRochers, Daniel Contreras, all these really great people I've had a chance to meet. That has been fantastic. At the same time, it opened doors for me in terms of the writing. It was my Star Wars Timeline Gold, which I retired after 20 years, basically 1997 up to 2018, right before its 21st anniversary, and Second Strike, that first audio drama, and my Chrono Radio, my first podcast, or whatever you want to call it, internet radio show, whatever, back in the day, that actually led to me being able to write for Star Wars Tales. Quick little one-shot story. Big deal. Whatever fan does good. Invited to the party. Whatever. It's one little story. Got some action figures. Awesome. But it gave me the confidence and help with the name recognition, I guess, that helped open some doors to eventually being able to write for Wars, for Grail Quest Books, and to being able to write for 10,000 Dawns, for Archbeetle Press, who now has the Wars license as well. Gave me the confidence to be willing to put out stuff that was self-published, that then got picked up, like Greater Good and Echoes, to be able to be published by other groups, to actually put together a saga on home video, to launch the YouTube channel, all this stuff. Spiraling out of, in a lot of ways, the confidence that came out of those early fandom projects of mine and getting that shot with Tales, thanks to Jeremy Barlow, and being able to kind of spin it out from there. There's a lot of things within my life that I owe to that, and it's been my hobby of choice for years. But as times have changed, I've found that I need more solitary pursuits when it comes to fan productions, like videos like these, like from the Star Wars Home Video Library, like writing a saga on home video. Solitary pursuits that still have a community aspect to them, through things like the Facebook group for Star Wars Home Video. I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate you, the existence of that group that Justin Berger put together, the constant support, the constant banter and discussion in that group. It's fuel for me. That's a kind of solitary pursuit that has with it a level of community, despite being a solitary pursuit. And solitary is what is kind of needed right now in a lot of ways for me, because I can't coordinate with other people when I'm working 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening every single weekday, when I'm watching my son usually by myself for most of the day on Saturdays, when Sunday is our one big family day and my one chance to step away while someone else is watching my son, our son, to be able to record anything. Coordinating with other adults just isn't really a thing right now when I've got a toddler running around and all this other stuff that I'm doing. I have to kind of focus in on the more solitary stuff. And in the process of that, I felt like I was starting to let people down. I know everybody's saying, no, you weren't, it's fine. We expected long gaps, it's fine, we were used to it. But I still felt like I was going to be letting people down, or letting people down by not being able to get stuff out more frequently. You got to remember, back when I used to do Chrono Radio, it was a monthly show. I went bi-monthly at one point, and then started doing supplemental episodes on the months that didn't have episodes, so it basically wound up still being monthly. When we were doing Republic Forces Radio Network, a lot of times it was like weekly, right? So months apart, and having to every month do one of these videos and mention how we still haven't recorded anything, still can't get together, it reminded me of how much I needed to step away from it. And that at some point it was going to happen. I could either let it happen by choice or by accident. Either my last episodes of something are just the last ones, and then I just don't ever get a chance to record again regularly, or I make the decision to actually have a final episode to be able to say goodbye and that sort of thing. So, Star Wars Beyond the Films number 247 was the episode in which I announced my retirement from Star Wars podcasting. Period. Full stop. I may pop up from time to time as a guest on some shows. Maybe during the year in review book stuff with Brock for Star Wars Action News or something, as often happens. But I am retiring from podcasting. My last episode of Star Wars Beyond the Films is going to be recorded this Sunday. That'll be episode 248. It's a feedback episode. If the opportunity arises, I will try to do another episode of Cloud City Casino with Michael Morris to do sort of a goodbye there, or at least maybe come up with a way to create like a skit for the beginning of an episode that has the goodbye in it, so he can then continue on talking about whatever with whomever. I'm not sure about Cloud City Casino, what his plans are, because we haven't had a chance to talk that much with everything else going on right now. With Mark, I know that he is bringing in Jim Lehane, who I have great faith in. Really good guy, very knowledgeable guy, Star Wars timeline-oriented guy, academically oriented guy, scientific thinking-oriented guy. I think you're really going to like him on Star Wars Beyond the Films. But suffice to say, it's time. After 18 years and being the single longest-running continuous Star Wars podcaster, at least in English, if not in any language, it's time to hang it up. And free myself to do the other things that I want to do, continue producing content, but doing so in a way that fits more with the lifestyle that I lead right now with, a toddler and the job and everything else. So, yeah, I appreciate the support from everybody over the years with the podcasts. We've got folks who listened to some of the first episodes of Chrono Radio who are still listening right now, which is amazing. In 18 years. My first podcast would have graduated from high school this year, although probably online instead of in person with COVID and everything. But yeah, suffice to say, that's wrapping that up. I want to make sure to note that here. So 247 was when I announced it, and it was our comics year in review. 248 will be the final one. It's not out yet. It's about to be recorded. It'll be out before the next of these Project Update episodes. As far as YouTube goes, lots of new releases through YouTube. I recorded in some bursts and got a chance to finally get those episodes edited and out. I don't expect nearly this much coming out next month, but it will start ramping up again once things kind of calm down with a couple of things. We'll address those here momentarily. So we had all episodes from the Star Wars Home Video Library in this case. We had episode 286, which was all the UK releases of The Rise of Skywalker released to that point, with the exceptions of the buy and keep Blu-ray and DVD copies from the Sky Store that we'll look at in the near future. I have the last of those two on its way to me now, slowly but surely. Once I have both, I'll show that. Also, the Zavi Collector's Editions had not yet been released yet. They have been. For some reason, mine isn't coming DHL like everybody else's. Mine is winging its way slowly as hell through Royal Mail. So eventually, someday, I'll be able to show those. Just like eventually, someday, I'll be able to show the A New Hope comparison I was trying to do from the UK, because I still have one item from JB Hi-Fi that is not here yet. I want to say it's been approximately 10 weeks now. I have to wait until the 1st of July before they'll send a replacement, so we'll see. But finally got the other UK Rise of Skywalker stuff into an episode. Again, episode 286. Then episode 287, we looked at two releases from Australia that did finally arrive. we had the Australian 4K / Blu-ray reissues of The Last Jedi and Solo in the black packaging that the US really didn't get because these were updated labels in one case and discs in the other case. Episode 288 looked at The Last Jedi reissue in the US with the black slipcover but the old crap inside. We had episode 289, that is the Complete Saga UK Blu-ray set in some packaging that's not quite a digibook, so not nearly as difficult to use or scratch prone. We looked at the limited edition of that. We had episode 290 where we looked at a collectible tin that you could get back in the UK in 2004 to put your, or to get your original trilogy DVD set in. In episode 291, we looked at the Complete the Saga watch set that promoted the Revenge of the Sith DVD release at Burger King. Episode 292 looked at the Solo reissue with the black packaging but the old crap inside, kind of like 288 with Last Jedi there. In episode 293, we looked at all the South Korean releases of The Rise of Skywalker. Episode 294 looked at a rental variant of the Clone Wars movie on DVD. Episode number 295 looked at the Toys R Us A Galaxy Divided exclusive version, having already looked at the regular one, the one from Walmart, and the one from Best Buy. And that one, by the way, is the one that opened the door to some other stuff going on. A gentleman by the name of Matt Fry is a fellow collector, or was a fellow collector of Star Wars home video stuff. And he decided he was going to get out of it and was going to basically hand off his collection, and he offered it to me. Basically, if I could pay the shipping cost, he would just send it all to me. And I could go through it, keep whatever, do whatever with it, right? There were quite a few things I did not have in my collection that are now in the collection, like V2000 cassettes. There are quite a few things that I had copies of, but my copies weren't in as good a shape, so I was able to swap them out. But there was also quite a bit of stuff that I already had and didn't need a replacement for. So in that case, I decided to sort of pay this forward. Just as he had been sort of a blessing to me and offer all that stuff for just the cost of shipping, I essentially have done the same thing with all the extras, boxes and boxes of extras, that I have then offered up to the community over on the Star Wars Home Video group on Facebook. All the items are spoken for now. I'm slowly in the process right now of packaging everything up, weighing it on a scale that I got through Stamps.com, and using a Stamps.com account to help prepare this stuff to actually ship it all. There's still a lot of boxes to go. In fact, that's where some of my recording time may be going soon. Usually I'd record on Sundays. After this Sunday, the following Sunday, or maybe the one after, that's probably going to be a whole lot of box packaging and weighing. I'm not really sure how much recording I'm going to get done because I need to get those things out of my living room. But trying to sort of pay that forward, and I've already seen others paying it forward again, where they're turning around saying, well, thank you, for preparing to send this stuff to me for the cost of shipping. Let me offer up some of my duplicates to the community and see if we can keep this kind of chain going and help each other out, which has been fantastic. And not because of my generosity. In theory, could I have kept it all? Sure. Just gotten rid of anything I didn't need? Sure. How would I have been able to do any good by just hoarding it or tossing what I didn't need? I felt an obligation, as he had helped me, to help others. So, in essence, I kind of feel like I'm a conduit for his generosity rather than being generous myself in this case. Look at it this way. He's offering the stuff, I'm offering the time. Put it that way if you want to think of it as a package deal. Suffice to say, though, those are still slowly rolling out, but we saw the first of the items that came from that in that episode 295 about that Toys R Us version of A Galaxy Divided. So that is where that began, and we had more coming up. So we picked up with episode number 296, looking at a white caddy variant, as opposed to the blue caddy variant of Return of the Jedi on CED. We had episode 297, where we looked at the 1992 Australian VHS boxed set. In episode 298, we looked at a press kit VHS cassette from 1997 to promote the special editions. In episode 299, we looked at the Last Jedi and Rogue One sticker variants, really kind of going into the weeds, where some of them had stickers promoting Movies Anywhere, others promoting Voodoo from Walmart. Yes, those type of sticker variants do exist for the 4K releases and Rise of Skywalker releases recently. I took the stickers off mine. I'm not going to repurchase everything twice more to be able to have those. That's getting a little bit too nitpicky even for me. We had episode number 300 of From the Star Wars Home Video Library. That was looking at the AFI John Williams Life Achievement Award Blu-ray set. Then episode 301, where we looked at the Long Box Club packaging for the Clone Wars Micro Series DVDs. Episode 302 Looked at some early copies of A New Hope from the UK. We looked at the Rental Library Beta, the Rental Library VHS, we looked at the V2000 copy, and we looked at the CBS Fox initial release whenever they changed over the name. Then episode 303, looking at the making of Star Wars from the UK with a 1982, actually with some 1979 releases, with the VHS and Beta releases of that, one of which you had seen before, but then also the 1982 release on VHS and V2000. So lots of episodes from the Star Wars home video library, all pumped out within the last month here. Speaking of home video stuff, where do things stand for the book? Move some stuff out of the way. The book is still in process. A Saga on Home Video 2nd edition still in progress. It is 494 pages, not counting front matter right now. It's big, it's huge. The original version, the first edition, was about 300 pages. Lots and lots of color pictures. Chapter 1, which is the one on the Super 8 stuff and the Kenner Movie Viewer stuff, and a little bit on 16mm, that is pretty much locked, ready to go. It's the first chapter to be in that position, so that's awesome. The other ones will take a while. Chapter 3 is close. I got some pictures to take and a little bit of proofreading to do, but Chapter 3 is very, very close. That's the one on the original One Last Time, right? So that's the chapter on the Definitive Collection in 93 up through the THX Remastered stuff in 95. It's one of the smaller chapters, but it's got a lot of new pictures to be taken. And yeah, I'm still doing a lot of hand editing, as you can see here. I tend to basically make notes in pen, and then whenever the time comes, see, I haven't gotten that far yet. Whenever the time comes to actually put it into the document, I highlight it in whatever color highlighter I happen to have, and I make a little note, like a check mark down at the bottom to let me know that there's nothing left to edit on that page for that particular pass. Lots of printer ink used. This is, I think, the third or fourth time I printed the entire thing. The first time in a while, though, at least within a few weeks, as I'm making yet another pass through it. Figuring out what stuff that Matt donated to my collection that I will wind up including in there that I might not have included before, that sort of thing. So it is still going. From a time standpoint, I can't say still whether or not it's going to be late 2020 or early 2021. I would say within the next year, which gives me until June or the end of June of 2021, but it's just hard to say. It kind of depends on what the newest releases wind up being, kind of depends on how much time I get to actually work on it, because as I discovered, as I sort of worked it out in my head, and I can't remember if this was last time on actually one of these updates or not, I basically am not getting a break from the end of last spring break until the beginning of Thanksgiving break this upcoming school year. Because we went straight from spring semester to post-planning to preparation for summer school to summer school session 1, which will overlap with a summer session 2 that I'm as a kind of a technical advisor for, whatever you want to call me, into immediately going into pre-planning and into the new school year. So finding a chance to actually do it. Sitting down and editing it by hand, that's easy. It's finding a chance to take the pictures, edit the pictures, and actually work the edits into the document itself on the computer in the bedroom. That is the tricky part with the toddler, and not a whole lot of time. So hopefully end of 2020, but no promises there. I am still planning on a nice thick paperback version and an ebook version that goes through the Kindle textbook creator. So basically it can be used on any Kindle app or be used on a Kindle Fire tablet or something like that. Would not necessarily work on e-ink screens like my Kindle Paperwhite, for instance. It's got just tons of color pictures and a little bit more of an elaborate design. Not sure about a hardback version. I'm not sure if Kindle Direct Publishing can do hardbacks. I haven't even really looked at it yet. But as we get closer, I'll talk more about where things stand. But lots more pictures to take. Just about every picture I've taken so far is now inserted into the book, which is part of why it's grown so much. Yeah, I imagine months more work on it, but it is a labor of love, so it doesn't really feel as much like work as it probably could or should. So, lots of stuff going on. The retirement from podcasting, the gift, basically, from Matt that I'm then trying to pay forward and everything that goes along with that. Lots of new episodes that were recorded that finally were able to get out there through YouTube. Lots of work being done on the book. And, of course, a lot of thanks for those of you who are backers over on Patreon, because that really is, it is helpful. Just putting this together meant printing out, because it's 500 or so pages right now, printing out about 250 sheets. I'm getting old, getting, joint stuff going on with the fingers and the wrists and everything. So difficult. It's difficult for me without a lot of pain afterwards and soreness afterwards to do a whole lot of hole punching. So the Patreon funds this last month basically went to purchase an automatic electric free hole puncher that can do like 20 pages at a time. I was able to just, in a few minutes, get this hole punched in here and start editing instead of spending a ridiculous amount of time and pain hole punching it to eventually, maybe later, getting a chance to actually work on it. So definitely a chance where you can see sort of a concrete fruit of those labors, or that support, I guess you'd call it, over on Patreon, because it really helped out a lot in getting this particular draft pass ready to go for the book. With that, we will wrap up this project update, this month of June that is almost done. Hopefully 2020 will be done soon, because damn. But yeah, thank you all for watching and your interest, and I'll see you in a month.